Attention, on its own, has no idea what order your words came in. Shuffle the tokens, and to the raw mechanism, nothing changes. A sentence is just a bag of vectors. So every transformer needs some way to tell the model where each token sits in the sequence. Rotary Position Embeddings, or ROPE, solve that with a beautifully simple trick, and it has quietly become the default choice in Llama, Qwen, GPT NeoX, and most modern language models. Let's walk through how it actually works and why that trick matters so much. Here is where rotary embeddings step in, right inside the attention mechanism. Follow one query and one key through it. Start with the token embeddings, the vectors that carry each word's meaning. Older schemes would take a separate position vector and simply add it onto each embedding before attention. ROPE does something different. It leaves the content vector completely alone and gets ready to rotate it instead. Here is the core move. ROPE rotates each query and key vector by an angle that grows with the token's position. It works on pairs of dimensions, treating every pair as a little rotation in a plane. Word 1 gets a small turn, word 50 gets a much larger one. Now watch what happens at the dot product. When two rotated vectors meet, their similarity depends only on the difference between their angles, which is the gap between the two positions. So the dot product naturally sees relative distance, not absolute slots. And that flows straight into attention. Because similarity already encodes how far apart two tokens are, the model reads relative position for free, with no learned position table sitting in memory. There is nothing extra to train and nothing pinned to a maximum length, so it also tends to extrapolate more gracefully when the input runs longer than anything it saw in training. To really feel why this matters, put the old way and the rotary way side by side. Classic absolute embeddings learn one vector per slot and add it to the token. Position 1, position 2, and so on, each a separate lookup. It works, but the table is fixed to a maximum length, and stretching past that length tends to fall apart. Rotary embeddings carry no table at all. Position becomes an angle, similarity becomes a function of the gap between tokens, and relative distance drops out automatically, without a single learned parameter. Look, that is why nearly every recent model, from Llama to Qwen to GPT NeoX, reaches for ROPE by default rather than the old absolute scheme. So let's pull out the 3 ideas that make rotary embeddings tick. Rotation replaces addition. Instead of adding a position vector, you spin the query and key by an angle set by their position, pair of dimensions at a time. Relative distance comes for free, because the dot product depends only on the angle gap. Attention reads how far apart tokens are without ever storing an absolute index. No table and better reach. There is nothing to learn and nothing capped to a fixed length. So rotary embeddings extend to longer sequences far more gracefully than a lookup table ever could, and they give later methods a clean foundation to stretch even further. All right, let's gather the takeaways worth carrying with you. Rotary embeddings encode position by rotating each query and key vector, working on pairs of dimensions like tiny two-dimensional turns. Because a dot product between rotated vectors depends only on the angle difference, attention naturally becomes a function of relative distance. There is no learned position table, so ROPE adds no parameters and tends to extrapolate to longer inputs more gracefully. Rotary embeddings are now the default positional scheme in Llama, Qwen, GPT NeoX, and most modern language models. Want more of these AI internals unpacked in plain language? Everything lives at Standarity.com. Come say hello.